Welcome to the Sisterly Submitted podcast, dedicated to changing the narrative about dating after 40. If you're interested in candid, unfiltered conversations between men and women, then you found your people. This is the podcast for you.
Welcome. We're your hosts, Diane and Dawn, hopeful romantics, changing the narrative about love after 40. Today, we're excited to have our special guest, Vassier. She is one of Atlanta's radio personalities. And if anybody's listened to Vassier, you know how positive she is. Or if you've met her, you know what a ray of sunshine she is. So we are really excited to have you today.
Thank you so much for having me. Dawn, I'm sorry.
It's okay. We're twins. It's okay.
I know this. But Diane, I appreciate you inviting me so very much and the opportunity to be in your presence once again and to meet your beautiful twin over here.
Aw, you're
she
so
looks
sweet.
familiar. Dawn, it's a pleasure to meet you. Finally, I've heard so much about you over the time that Diane and I have been speaking, so I'm ready to get into this and talk about love because positivity is key.
Absolutely.
Well, Vassier, we are excited to hear the woman behind the voice. You have a beautiful personal glow. You've got a great story, and we are looking forward to jumping right in.
I am ready. Let's roll. Get it done.
Yes, we're so excited again to have you. Today's episode is called Love Wins, From Trauma to Triumph. And we're excited to hear about how you still have hope in finding love, even after some false starts.
Yeah, definitely false starts. Few of them, literally a few.
It's going to be a great conversation, but first we have a word from our sponsor.
If you were offered the key to unlock the future of your dreams, a life filled with love, prosperity, and pure joy, would you take it? Ruth E. Daniels has developed a plan with the tools you need to unlock the potential within and manifest your dreams. This practical plan, including Daniel's Manifesting Guide, The Glamorous Life, her book of affirmations, and the Glamorous Life Journal, work in tandem to teach you step by step how to manifest love, wealth, and a life of bliss. Order the Glamorous Life set today and manifest the extraordinary life you deserve.
Take us back to your early years. Tell us about how where you grew up, what family life was like, and a little bit about what your prototype of love looked like.
Yeah, put on y'all seatbelts because it's, you know what, I'll give you the short version of the story. So in all seriousness, so I grew up originally in Cleveland, Ohio. I was actually, my older sister and I were kidnapped from my mom by my dad when I was barely 2 years old. My sister was about 3 years old. And we were taken from my mom. My mom and my dad married when my mom was 18 years old, and they went separate ways because my father was abusive. My mom took myself and my sister with her, and my father found out where we were, and he kidnapped us. So I was in his care from the age of 2 to 12. He was a functioning alcoholic, an abusive alcoholic. So between 2 and 12, I lived under his reign, if you will. I was a very followed product of the Department of Social Services of Cleveland, Ohio, my sister and I. And finally, at the age of 12, they removed me from my father's care and reintroduced me to my mother, moved me to Charleston, South Carolina, or at least South Carolina, the outskirts. And
With your sister?
no, actually, my sister had become a part of the system. So group homes, being locked up here and there. At the time that we were supposed to leave, she never showed up for the flight. The Department of Social Services had reached out to her to bring her along to be with my mother, and she never showed up for the flight. So me at 12 years old took my first flight to Charleston by myself to meet my mother, my biological mother, again, because I'd seen her off and on throughout my younger years, but I didn't really identify her as my mother. And so I was sent to live with her by the age of 12, and by the age of 14, I was in foster care and a ward of the state of South Carolina.
Oh, wow.
Was there a woman in the home at all with your dad, or was it just you, your sister, and your dad?
At times, there were women in the home. He only remarried once in that time, and he was abusive to that wife as well. So she was wise enough to get away from him. And then it was very, very challenging because, you know, you have to keep secrets and so on, which was something that affected me later on in relationships as far as secrecy was concerned, because here the man in my life was abusing us physically. Well, from my experience, only physically. And going to school, having to lie about those experiences, where my lip was busted, where my eye was black, you know, different stories. I lied on my dog so many times. That poor doggy. That dog did everything. But again, long term, them removing me from my father was supposed to be the fix. But, and this again speaks to relationship and what my image of love was. My mother didn't have a good history with her parent, and she was a runaway when my dad met her, so there was trauma there. And so going back into that relationship with someone who had never faced their own trauma, trying to raise a child who was 12 years old, it was very, very challenging. And so even though I had a younger sister, my younger sister is the product of my mother's union with another man. We lived with her. I lived with her for a very, very short time before I became ward of the state of South Carolina. And I lived in foster care until I was 18. I emancipated myself. I'm going to save you the big stories, all the little bits and pieces in between there. But I met my first husband when I was in high school in Charleston, South Carolina. I went to Burke High School in Charleston, and he went to the Citadel, which was not far down the street. I met him on a blind date. Really? So a girlfriend of mine in high school introduced me to the guy she was dating, his roommate. Okay. And so I met that gentleman, and to this date, I can say that is my strongest example of what a man-woman relationship is supposed to be, as far as marriage is concerned. It did not last because there were several reasons why, but I look back and I reflect and I understand that I wasn't even a woman. I didn't know how to be a woman. And that man tried every bit of his heart to show me things that I had never been exposed to before, because at that particular time, my only example of a functioning family was The Cosby Show. Wow. I had no real examples of life. And so that man loved me.
Did you feel that you weren't worthy of his love?
I did.
When he came in, you were the relationships that you'd experienced and possibly what he'd experienced were so different.
Very different. He grew up in a household with his mom and his dad. His only other sibling was 20 years younger than he was. So when I met him, he was 20 and his little brother was just 1 year old. So, and you know, his mom had her second child in her 40s. And so it was a lively experience to see that family dynamic. And I desired it, but I didn't know how to maintain that. And like I said, I was struggling to be a woman. I didn't know how to be a wife. And he tried. That man tried to cover me in love. He tried to cover me in spirit. These were things I never seen. Because to me, love was dysfunction. Mm-hmm. And so I wasn't able to reciprocate that. And I ended up moving away from Charleston at 18 and coming back in my early 20s, where we reunited, ended up getting married at about 22, 23, and ended up separating one time in our marriage, and then we got back together, and then a second time I ended up leaving when I was 30, and I moved to Orlando, Florida. Again, not being able to reciprocate what he desired as a husband, wanting from his wife. But there were some other issues as well. At that time, my focus was primarily, if I'm your wife, yeah, I'm supposed to be your whole world. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't getting that. I went into depression. He was the only man I've ever wanted to have children with. We weren't getting pregnant. Had some medical challenges there. Eventually found out that I was fine, but we still weren't getting pregnant. And he was a hard worker. He's the type of guy that would go and work his 9 to 5, personal train on the weekends. Went to a military college, and he was military himself. So, you know, it's a part of his life, but it didn't seem like he ever had time for me. And then I ended up going into depression and ended up being diagnosed with depression, to be quite honest with you. And so running away from that relationship is one of the very few things I regret in life. But I do, again, understand on this side of the conversation that I just didn't have it to give because I had never experienced it. And then I didn't even know who I was spiritually. Mm-hmm. When we separated at 30, I learned who I was spiritually through my own practice and my own private time alone. And I did not get involved with anybody else for almost 15 years.
Wow.
Yeah. And ended up getting married to the second guy in Orlando, Florida. I met him on Match.com.
Okay.
So yes, I am willing to try different ways of meeting people. The first person was a blind date. The second one was on Match.com. We had different cultural backgrounds. And although I told this man 3 times that I did not want to marry him, I felt pressured into marrying him. I did marry him. And it was a huge mistake. The cultural misunderstandings. He was originally from the island of Puerto Rico. Although he was, I believe, Coast Guard reserved, and he was living in Florida. His native land was Puerto Rico. Okay. And there was a lot of cultural difference that we just could not get over. And I had to let that marriage go. I tried to file for the divorce, and he wouldn't sign the papers. So I left and moved to Atlanta, so he had to file by publication.
By any means necessary. Right?
By any means necessary. It had some really bad red flags there, and some of them leaning a little toward an abusive behavior. And I have no tolerance for that whatsoever. But again, I look to see where my flaws are every time because I want to learn. I don't want to keep making the same mistake. And in that one, I was still on fight or flight, and I wasn't about to fight.
Right.
So I ran off to Atlanta, and I had been single for a number of years here, and I met somebody, began working with them, which is how we got involved, and ended up getting married, which is my most recent divorce.
Okay.
Divorce number 3, and
but you still believe in love, and that's why I think it's so amazing.
I do. In that marriage, again, taking responsibility, I will say the biggest betrayal I've ever experienced was me betraying myself. Mm. It is very important to me that I have someone that is a strong person of faith and understands God the way that I do from experience. And that wasn't a strong presence in our relationship. And so I had to make the decision. Was I going to stay? Now, I allowed him to make the decision on whether he wanted to get a divorce, since he's the one that spoke up and said that he was unhappy, because I was in it to win it. Mm-hmm. I suggested counseling. We went to counseling. He did not want to continue. So I tried. But I wasn't going to fight anymore when I realized that I had a spiritual release with him. There were some things that had finally come to me and said, you know what? You can't keep fighting other people's battles. At some point, you got to give in and understand that I have a calling on my life. Yeah. And I'm not going to submit in a place where there is no vision. I'll leave it like that, respectfully. And so, yes, I expect love. I desire love. But the biggest lesson that I've learned, I now have what I call a humiliversary. What does that mean? I recently shared with you ladies that my car had been broken into actually earlier this week. So I want to say January 10th. That time it was ransacked. And my very best friend, I've known him for 20 plus years. I had actually called him and he would not answer my call. And I called him again. But the second time that I called him, I felt as though I was bothering him. And I said to myself, why do I have this feeling? My concern wasn't for myself anymore. It was maybe there's something happening with him. Because I finally allowed myself to understand. When he got back to me, he says, you did not leave me a message saying that you needed my help. And I realized I don't know how to ask for help. Mm-hmm. I don't know how to accept help. I didn't understand the humility in it. Because all I know is to be strong because of all the adversity I've been through, right? Always be there to help others. Not helping myself. So I realized I might have played a part in every one of my relationships as well. Mm-hmm. So I'm very cognizant. I'm very, very well aware that in order for me to receive love the way that I want it, I got to open myself up and love me. Right. And believe that I am deserving of love.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, I'm on a completely different path as far as my understanding of love and what I'm able to reciprocate and places where I need work. And I believe there's some fine gentlemen out there who is educated, well-spoken, looks fly to me, and understands the principle of what love really, really is, not what we are being fed now in social media and a lot of other podcasts.
Yeah. So what is love? Okay, we all have, we have a type.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's physical, but as far as what is it that you are looking for that you think, because what works for me might not work for you.
Yeah.
What works for Diane doesn't work for me, So for you, the person who you think is like your person, like that person who God placed on this earth for you. You all are spiritually connected. You're in tune. You like the way he looks. He might not be the finest man on the planet, but
As
for
long as he
you,
look good to me.
yeah,
Right.
he looks good to you. And, and what is it? Like what kind of a person is that? Like there's
Thank
really
you.
like, what are the qualities that you're looking for?
Thank you so much for that question, Dawn, because okay, let's say what I used to. Let's talk about what I used to like. Now, when I say what I used to like, I still like it. Don't get twisted.
Right.
But I understand that when it comes down to a number of things, if they're not right in here, it's an ugly situation. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I like a tall man. I am 5'5" '3/4". I call that 5'6". Okay. And I love a man that I can look up into his eyes, maybe him pick me up a little, because I've always wanted I like big guys. I did date a defensive end back in the days. He was like 6'5", 280. It was monkey bars. Love it. Okay, that's my esoteric preference.
Right.
Okay. But the reality is, a man can be 5'4". As long as he's attractive to me, it's his spirit. Mm-hmm. For me, I really, really desire a spiritual connection, because I don't think anybody's going to be able to understand me otherwise. Mm-hmm. And when I say a spiritual connection, not just because there are many people that are very spiritual, they're not necessarily religious, and I'm not. I've studied religion. I'm not a religious person, meaning all these different things that men break down, these
scriptures.
Yeah, how we break it down into denominations. I'm not really into that. There's a God.
Yeah.
Now, I don't care what anybody else says. I speak to from my experience.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
No, not the one that people tell me about, the one that I've had in my one-on-one time, right? So I need somebody that understands spiritual matters. Because without it, they're not going to be able to understand me. I need a man that's patient, that understands what the fruit of the spirits are, because that's one of them.
Right.
Okay. I do believe people have characteristics, like they say, these listed zodiac signs or whatever. I am a Libra woman. I love justice. I love balance. I love helping people pull their lives together. But I want somebody that can help me take off this cape. And when I say take off the cape, I respect and I understand that if it's going to be a black man, he already got enough going on in the world. Mm-hmm. Already. He doesn't want to come home to a combative female. But I also need him to understand I've got a lot going on in the world too. And I don't want to come home to the drama either. So it's important to me that a man understands accountability, especially with other females. I don't want to have to constantly remind him about his behavior with other females. I've lived this experience. It don't work for me. Mm-hmm. But understand what accountability is. Watch a man by how he associates with other men. When he walks in a room, is he genuinely respected? Do other men lean on him for advice because they see him as great counsel? Because that's what I want to be able to do. I want to lean on a man I seek as great counsel, not somebody that sits in the congregation of fools.
Right. And you can't trust their decisions.
No,
like you have to know this person.
I can't. I need a leader.
When they're going to make a decision, they've done the research.
Correct.
Like we do the research.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. So he has to have leadership skills.
So
because that's the only way I'm going to submit.
Right. Do you feel that that's where I think a lot of us struggle, because we've had to be leaders a lot in life? Do you feel that you are at a place now where you can accept, you talked about the humility of it all and asking for help and that kind of thing. Do you feel like you're in the place now where you're ready to accept that if you find that leader?
That's the key for me, is the person in a leadership role. Mm-hmm. Because I have been doing a lot on my own. And I'm not saying that I want to give that up. I want to finally be able to trust someone. I did trust my first husband, and I didn't even understand what that meant, even what submission meant. I didn't understand that, but I knew in here, I felt protected by him mentally, spiritually, emotionally, even physically. I felt protected by that guy. And so I think that I've been seeking that same type of relationship with others, but they haven't demonstrated. So, okay, well, maybe they don't have leadership, but they're really nice.
Right.
Well, they're really nice and they do have leadership, but they don't understand accountability. We can work with that. I'm not doing that anymore.
Yeah.
What's interesting is I wonder if you never met your first husband until now, do you think that your marriage would have been different?
Respectfully, my first husband is married now, and I respect that 100%. Where's my camera? I don't mean any disrespect at all. That's the only man I would ever do a second chance with.
Really?
Yes, and I don't do second chances.
Yeah.
Like, fool me once, shame on you.
Right.
There's no fool me twice.
Yeah, it sounds like you weren't ready for him.
No,
but
at that
was
time in my
the
life.
kind of man that you really needed. And,
Absolutely.
you know, it's like sometimes we know, and that's funny in relationships because it's like,
Timing is everything.
yeah, timing. It's like, is it the right time and the right person?
That man made me, for the first time in my life, felt like that I was actually loved by another human being.
Wow.
Up until that point, because of my life's experiences, up until that point, I thought I was just a throwaway. One of the most important things that ever happened to me in my life was when I was in my, when I was in my 40s, I decided to send for my paperwork from the Department of Social Services to see if there were answers there. I don't understand, how do I feel aborted after I was born? The people that were supposed to love me, my parents, would treat me a particular way. What did I do to deserve this? And then I had experienced this love with this man, and I had never experienced love like that, but I felt it, right? But I could never find it again. So it was just like, maybe there's some answers in this paperwork. So I sent for my paperwork from the Department of Social Services, just going, maybe there would be some history here. No. And for me, it was like looking at a page and seeing the big red word rejected on every page. Just no answers, no answers, no answers. And so it took me a long time to understand that same love that I felt with my first husband was something I needed to create for myself.
Yes.
Wow.
Well, good.
Which is why I cannot accept anything. Now, that's not to say I'm looking for perfection, because I don't have it to give.
Right.
I don't have it to give. So I'm not expecting it in return, but I am expecting an honest effort to live. I believe in choosing your quality of life.
Yeah.
I believe that if somebody's going to choose me in their life, they are looking for quality. And I am looking for the same. I'm looking for someone that can reciprocate what I have to give, as well as leave room to learn each other, to be able to make mistakes, but not be able to disrespect each other, disregard one another. Be out here wilding in the streets thinking you're going to bring that home, because I've had that too. So, and when I say I've had that too, it surprises me. I'm sorry, this is kind of a different subject, but it surprises me how men and women who not necessarily are married, but can be married, but live with their significant other, are out here messing around on them and wonder why their woman is acting a particular way at home, or their man is acting a particular way at home, when they out there picking up spirits from people and bringing it back home. What's that? You got a nice woman at home that takes care of you from head to toe and is answering your every need, but you still out here kicking it with the wild girls in the street and wonder why your woman start acting up? Sir, you laying with that spirit and bringing it home to your very nice wife at home, and you wonder why she start getting buck? Stop carrying these spirits into your homes, into your domicile, and into your spirits. I'm sorry, I'm just preaching.
Yeah. Preach.
But it's out there. There are genuine men and women out there that are looking for real love, not Instagram love.
Yeah.
Right.
Not this sick stuff that we're being sown today. I'm sorry, I'm going to say it, and I know this is an old topic from last year, from 2023. It's still relevant. Don't take me to Cheesecake Factory.
Oh.
Yeah.
Now, I understand the premise, because I'm the type of person where if I want roses, my favorite flower, are birds of paradise.
My father used to give us those, the purple and orange.
Yes, I love those flowers.
Yeah.
How can I tell somebody I love birds of paradise or copper roses if I've never purchased it for myself? How, if I can't create an environment for myself, can I expect someone else to give it to me? And I understand that if you live at a certain level of finance and you only eat in fine places, that is fine. But if you meet somebody and they're not able to meet that requirement of yours, but you receive their presence, then you should at least show some humility.
Sure.
And do what they can do so that they can show you their best. It may not meet what you have to offer, but that's what partnership is about.
Right.
So to cut somebody down because that might not be your first choice. Are you there for the meal or are you there for the man?
Well, so many are there for the meal, you know.
Of course.
We talked to one guest this season who was a guy, and we talked about this ordering at the top of the menu and that kind of thing, and what some of the women do. And he said, you know, the guys at the barbershop are talking about this very issue. And he said, women that do things like that, they're not thinking in terms of the long game.
Absolutely.
They want a meal that day. But men are thinking of it like, would this be a good partner for me? Is she thinking about my wallet when she's, ordering at the top of the menu? We don't really even know each other. This is our first date. And you want me to spend this? And are you having the sensitivities that you should have towards me and partnership if that's something that you really genuinely are looking for?
And even as a woman, yes, I have a desire and I have a perfect date in mind. You know, I'm gonna go ahead and share it. I have this thing that I curated. It's called From Noon to Midnight. It's a long date, but let me express it. You're not really going out till midnight, let me say that. But let me express it this way. I have historically, I have a reputation of doing this. I will meet somebody, and I've done this before, eating by myself, as I usually do, out at a nice restaurant, and I'll see a gentleman that's eating alone. I might find him attractive. I will ask the waitress if I notice that he doesn't have a ring or anything. Is he dining alone? Ask him if he'd like to join me. I've done this before, and one of these joins, this was years ago.
That's good.
This date, we met there, and of course we're living in a different world now, but we met there, we got to know each other, each other's background, and I do weigh what he has to lose. It's like, well, they have receipts here, both of us were here, my waitress can already say I introduced them. Yes, they met at this table, there is somebody who knows in case something happened. But nonetheless, we ended up hanging out for almost 8 to 9 hours after that. We had dinner, we went and did something fun, we had conversation, all that stuff. And I ended up dating that guy for a little while. This was back in Orlando. But here, I have curated this date all on my own. And this is something that I want to experience with someone. I won't just take anybody out on this date. And here it is, again, from noon to midnight. I like Chateau Ylan. That's my place to go to sit back and relax, and I'm a charcuterie fan. So I will go there, I'll order charcuterie. I'll go and eat at the restaurant, have lunch, leave the rest of my charcuterie, go over to the wine tasting, drink my wine, have my charcuterie, drive back into the city, and then go someplace. And in this particular curated date, this would have been the Illuminarium. They had, I can't remember what it's called right now, but it was seeing space at night, Illuminarium at night. So it was just going at noon and then going it started after 6 o'clock. So you go on this date, it's an hour plus drive up there, right? You're getting to know each other. You're having lunch with one another. You're having the wine tasting with one another. It's an hour back. You go to your separate places or pack a bag, change your clothes for the evening at Chateau, right? And then you go to the next destination. You spend time just really getting to know each other for the day. And I love stuff like that, right? But I'm not going to just do that with everybody. Right. Everybody's not worth that, right? So get to the coffee date first, getting back there. Get to the coffee dates first. Get to know somebody. Really genuinely get to know them. And then decide, I've already had this experience myself. This is the person I want to share this experience. Sure. Stop expecting an experience immediately. Yeah. What have you done?
In the 8 hours too, there's going to be a lot that's going to come out on both sides. And you might say, you know what? I'm glad I had a chance to really get to know this person, but this right here is a red flag.
Absolutely.
And that's a huge red flag. And, having spent time, I saw the way that he was so rude to the waitress. I mean, to the wait staff. Oh my God!
Yeah.
Every
Exactly.
time
You learn a lot.
Yes, and
Like,
so
this dude drinks like a fish.
Right.
This ain't gonna work for me.
Right.
But yeah,
I love that. It's a
gives
lovely,
an
lovely
opportunity
day.
for a lot. And so going back to again, that date is expensive. We already know this. Okay, that's an expensive date, but that's not for everybody. So if a man is approaching me and he says to me, "Can I meet you out for coffee?" This man, unless he's a fool, is not asking me for a booty call. You mean to tell me that I'm so dang uppity that I can't spend some time getting to know somebody over a cup of coffee? I drink coffee by myself. I'd like to have company.
Right.
So what's wrong with that? I don't know when that became, that's not necessarily minimum effort to me. It's an effort.
And if a lot of the men that we're attracted to, they're busy. So,
Child, tell me about
to have a cup of coffee, when you have a schedule, you've never met this person.
Yes.
This is somebody new. That's doable.
And if they're willing to take the time out, even if they're extremely busy, if they are willing to take the time out of the day and say, you know what, I can't do an 8-hour date, but hey, I can give you 2 hours. I'm genuinely interested in getting to know you. Baby, that 2 hours is about to be the best 2 hours you ever had in your life. You're going to remember me when you go back to work. You ain't going to want to work. Right.
And then his calendar's going to suddenly open up for that 8-hour date.
Trust.
Maybe not tomorrow.
Exactly.
But, soon. So.
Trust and believe that. But we don't do that anymore.
It's like a sampler. The coffee is a sampler. Get there, let your personality be your personality, and find out what his personality is like. Because I think coffee is perfect because, I don't drink coffee, but spice cider.
It's an example.
Spice cider, go to Starbucks and order the cider and enjoy, but just have an opportunity to meet someone new, figure out who they are. And you don't have to spend time at dinner. You don't have to feel like you owe them anything. You don't have to feel like they owe you anything. It's just your time. You guys are exchanging time and exchanging, information about who you are. And you can immediately say, I really like this guy. I want to I want to spend more time with him. I think that it gives you an opportunity, like during dinner, it's like we've got all these different, the waiters coming back and forth and all of that.
Who wants to go to the movies to get to know someone?
Right. You can't talk or you're being rude, And so for me, it seems like you don't have to spend a lot of time, because if it doesn't work out, you can politely say, okay, well, I'm finished with this.
But even at the end of the day, even if it's not, if it's not a good date, you still will have had an experience yourself, right? Take something away for yourself. Take a souvenir. People bring bottles of sand back from the Bahamas and other tropical places, not because the sand is so expensive. It's such a great thing. It's because that's experience
memories
in the bottle. That's what they're buying. So even if it's a bad day, you still had an experience. Maybe you don't take this person with you next time, but you do it yourself because you enjoy it so much. But there's an opportunity there, to your point, to get to know the other person, spend real time with them, throw off all of this charade that people put up. This is ridiculous. And really get a chance to spend time with one another. That, to me, is missing a lot in this dating experience, even in the 40-plus range.
Yeah. Thanks for watching the Sisterly Submitted podcast. We'll be back next week to continue the conversation with Vassier. This episode was sponsored by Fertile Myrtle Publishing. Get your glamorous life set to manifest love, wealth, and a life of bliss. Available on Amazon.
Make sure to check us out next week for a new episode on Thursday. We'll see you next time.